a couple of minutes over, but we are about to get started for our regular meeting. And what I will ask is everyone to please stand for the invocation by Councilmember Wilder, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. All right, let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the Lynchburg City Council and its council members and the city and staff. We thank you for the work we're doing for our community. Continue to give us guidance and direction as we lead our city through this pandemic time periods. Bless those that have the sickness and bless our healthcare workers, our first responders, and God, and give them protection and covering during this time period. And those that have lost loved ones, we speak peace to them and their families. Give us the financial resources that our city will rebound. We speak prosperity in our community. For those that may have lost wages, we speak prosperity in their families, that those families will be encouraged during this time period, that the city will meet those needs. The city individuals will meet those needs for our community, because we remember that we are one. We will show more love to our citizens. We will show more love to one another, and we'll be more united during this time period. In your precious name we pray, amen.
Thank you. First, I have a proclamation, and because of social distancing and that sort of thing, I have a proclamation that I will pass forward, and we will do that in this respect. We can't bring people up in groups, but first is a proclamation for the Office of Economic Development and Tourism, Week of Extra Appreciation. Whereas economic development and tourism have a critical role in Lynchburg and the nation's economic prosperity and promote economic well-being and quality of life for communities by creating, retaining, and expanding jobs that facilitate growth, enhance wealth, and provide a stable tax base. And whereas economic development and tourism stimulate and incubate entrepreneurism in order to establish the next generation of new businesses, which are the hallmark of the American economy. And whereas economic development and tourism programs and initiatives attract and retain high-quality jobs, develop vibrant communities, and improve the quality of life in their regions. And whereas Lynchburg businesses of all sizes and industries will depend on economic development and tourism programs and initiatives to support them through and after the coronavirus pandemic. And whereas economic development and tourism programs and incentives will be a necessary and prominent component of our return to everyday life. And whereas the International Economic Development Council and U.S. Travel Association have created National Economic Development Week and National Travel and Tourism Week to highlight these contributions made by businesses and industries to their communities. And whereas the City of Lynchburg's Office of Economic Development and Tourism has combined National Economic Development and Travel and Tourism Weeks into the Week of Extra Appreciation to thank local businesses for all they do to make Lynchburg a great place to live, work, and play. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Trenae Tweedy, Mayor of the City of Lynchburg, Virginia, do hereby declare May 3rd through 9th, 2020, Office of Economic Development and Tourism Week of Extra Appreciation for the businesses and their employees in Lynchburg, and urge all citizens to join me in recognizing the critical role they all play in making Lynchburg the best small city in America. April 28th, 2020. Thank you very much. I'll ask Margette Upshur to come forward and receive that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'd just like to take a moment at this extraordinary time and to address the citizens of Lynchburg. Thank you for this recognition, although it's next week, so stay happy this week, and then please thank all the businesses next week as well. As you've just heard, the International Economic Development Council and the U.S. Travel Association set aside the first week of May as a time to increase awareness for local economic development efforts that support job creation, advance talent development, increase the quality of life, and highlight the importance of the tourism industry on our local economy. We know that this extraordinary time has been incredibly challenging, but we also know that we, our businesses and our citizens, are innovative and resilient. Our community has found new ways to demonstrate our ingenuity and our pride. Businesses are innovating and even expanding. Our creative sector is spreading joy remotely, and our people's compassion never ceases to inspire. We all want to return to a feeling of normalcy, and as leaders, economic developers, and stewards of our city's future, we have asked ourselves, how will we respond to this unique challenge? What we must choose to do differently. How will we continue to serve our businesses, large and small? How will we position our city to welcome back visitors, conferences, and sporting events? Our office remains focused on promoting and supporting the Lynchburg business community. During this time, we continue to invest by actively working with large employers, even now, on expansion projects. We continue to provide space for entrepreneurs to explore. For example, we are hosting our Spring Co-Starters class virtually. We continue to tell the story of the city of Lynchburg and have launched the I Am Lynchburg campaign to highlight and celebrate local employers, business owners, and frontline staff. We continue to develop meaningful and lasting relationships with our major employers, anchor institutions, small businesses, and tourism drivers, directly connecting with hundreds in the last few weeks alone to determine challenges and needs. We as a community care deeply about one another and the people that work each day to make Lynchburg the special place that it is. I know you will join us and whenever possible, say a sincere thank you to the local restaurants, shop owners, delivery drivers, corporate CEOs, accountants, waiters, frontline staff, healthcare workers, firefighters, police, all our public servants, nonprofits leaders, marketers, refuge collectors, and so many others. The city of Lynchburg is made extraordinary by our people. All of us will be needed to serve on the front lines of recovery. We will get through this unprecedented time together, and when the clouds lift, and they will, we will continue to work making Lynchburg the best small city in America. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Upshur. Now is another great part of our program. We get to recognize a very important group for certificates of valor. And so I have just a couple of remarks, and we have a couple of other people who will come forward with remarks, and then we will be presenting certificates of valor. So, for the past few months, our televisions, our news feeds, and conversations have been taken up with this global pandemic called COVID-19, and every aspect of our lives has changed. Unfortunately, along with the uncertainty of such a devastating phenomenon, there has also been quite a bit of negativity. However, there has also been so many stories of hope and goodwill. This evening, I am happy and very happy that Councilmember Wilder asked the city manager to share one of those stories with us today. Our Department of Communications and Public Engagement has prepared a short video for us, and then I believe Fire Chief Wormser will have a few remarks.
It was blacked out. You really couldn't see the stairs. You couldn't see the numbers on the doors.
It was black. It was blacked out conditions. Forced to door. forced the door to the apartment.
We have technical difficulties. Stand by. So what I will ask is, while we're standing by, are we ready?
To the apartment where they assumed.
Lynchburg 911, what's the address of the emergency?
I live at 1513 Longview Road. I'm in apartment 264. The apartment underneath me is smoking real bad, and I think it's on fire.
EMS 1 arrived on scene pretty quickly and let us know that we had smoke showing and fire showing from the second floor.
Lynchburg 911, what's the address of the emergency?
Ma'am, my kids are stuck in my apartment. They said there's an apartment in my building that is on fire. People been at my door trying to get my kids out of there. They stuck in the house. Can you please send somebody to get my kids out?
In the stairwell, it was blacked out. You really couldn't see the stairs. You couldn't see the numbers on the doors.
It was blacked out conditions. Forced the door to the apartment where they assumed that there was some people trapped.
We made entry into the apartment. It was clear, so we shut the door to keep all the smoke out. We found the girls in a back room, and then I called for a ladder so that we would take them out a window instead of going back down through the smoke.
We were assigned to RIT. I was on engine 4. That means that we are setting up outside for potential emergencies that are inside, throwing ladders, starting saws, things like that. And we heard engine 1 on the inside calling for a ladder, and the battalion chief and I got the ladder from engine 3 and set it to the 3rd story window where engine 1 was flagging us down for the rescue of the 2 girls.
Just happened to be that I saw one of the firefighters hanging out the window just trying to get someone's attention so that we could get the ladder to him. So me and Master Firefighter Shackelford were able to get that ladder to him and help him out.
We had to coach the girls to get down, which is pretty scary. You're coming out of a 3rd floor window to a guy that you don't know to get down to safety.
They were actually, given the situation, very calm. They were scared, obviously, but they were able to focus on what we needed them to focus on. They were able to listen and follow directions. They did very well.
We go through training every day, and it's for situations like this. It doesn't happen every day, but we need to be prepared for it. And so when we get these types of calls and we're able to do our job appropriately, it's a really good feeling.
It was a good feeling, somebody, lived another day, and it could have turned out for the worst.
It was great. We enjoy it, and like I said, this was a good outcome. So it was a really good feeling to see these 2 girls and the outcome that they had.
No, these aren't the everyday calls. These are the ones that we train for. The everyday calls are very, very simple in nature. These are very complex, and this is what we train for, and this is what we enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that, just like the other people have said, it's something you train for every day. It doesn't happen every day, but you have to be ready when it does.
you very much, and I will call Chief Wormser for his remarks.
Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, I'm showing my age. I'll put on my readers so that I don't miss something on my notes. You know, first of all, I want to echo some of the comments that you heard on the video. This type of situation is something that is rare in our city, but I'm very thankful for the fact that we have highly trained, highly skilled providers that can answer the call at a moment's notice, regardless of the time, regardless of the magnitude of the situation. They're always there. I want to take a moment to thank you for your continued support to our workforce and our community. I'm humbled and honored to lead such a great, incredible workforce like the folks you see behind me, with the talents that are far-reaching and incredibly authentic. The family that these firefighters rescued could not be here tonight. As luck would have it, they're working. They work in the healthcare field, which was an important fact that we found out late last week in talking with them, but we have been in regular contact with that family. They do send their heartfelt gratitude for saving their lives while putting their own lives in peril. I would also point out that today is National Superheroes Day, and I'm thankful for our superheroes that wear the Lynchburg firefighter uniform every day.
Thank you very much. We have certificates that are here, and Councilmember Wilder, because he was the initiator of this, we want to give him the opportunity to give remarks as well. And followed by that, I will read the Certificate of Valor and call out everyone's names, and then Councilmember Wilder, you will give that to them.
Again, just want to thank you again from our community, especially for Ward 2, for the work you've done in our community for saving those lives. I run a business right across the street from James Crossing, and we understand the importance of things you did with putting your lives on the line every single day for our community, for our children, and saving those young girls' lives. We appreciate that. And in the midst of a pandemic and things that our nation is dealing with, you know, after 9/11, our nation became more sensitive. And I think it's so important for us as citizens to be sensitive to all the needs of others, especially our first responders, from our healthcare workers, how they're putting their lives on the line every single day. I saw in the news where a doctor, ER doctor, that got the COVID virus committed suicide in New York recently. And it is so sad to see. It's sometimes so overwhelming with all the deaths that are going on in our nation. So I'm so thankful for the first responders, for our fire, for our police, for our healthcare workers, for the work you're doing in our community, especially during this time period. And not just this time period, every single day you put your lives online. And I was going through trying to find some information and how can we really appreciate all of our first responders and healthcare workers. And they recommended certain quick things. I was doing roll call, but I'll do it real fast, is maybe cooking a meal for them, because I realized like the fire department have to do their own meals, which I was so shocked at that. They have to cook their own meals. So we'll be donating meals to them, donating some to a good cause in honor. I'm doing a lot of thanks, letting them know how much we appreciate them, and sending a practical gift basket to the fire department, our police department, our healthcare worker. Just saying thank you for what you do in our community, so we appreciate that. And one way we can also do that is support them by buying meals, but going to some of our restaurants that are suffering right now. We can support two causes by supporting some of our local restaurants, home-based restaurants here in our great community, and by getting meals for our fire department or for our police department or even for our healthcare workers. I realized also in the news today that sometimes the cafeterias may be closing at some of the healthcare institutes, like the hospitals in that nature, where they might not have a meal that they can get, where certain persons are doing meals for some of our healthcare workers at nighttime. So again, for us as a community, we can really come together now more than ever and show how Lynchburg is strong, how we can support one another, encourage one another, and be there for them and for you, for all the work you do in our community to make us live a safe life. And we appreciate your work that you did in James Crossing and saving those young persons' lives. Thank you so much, and may God bless you. Thank you.
And I feel like the mask kind of covers a lot. I've had it on for 2 hours, so I'm going to take it off. I'm practicing what the guidelines are saying. But definitely, to echo Councilmember Wilder, we just want you to know that, I'm sure I speak for all of council, that we know who you are, what you do for our community, and we appreciate it. Your courage, your bravery. It's not everyone that's going to run into a fire, and that takes special people, special hearts, special training, and just folks who care about the humanity of our city. and want to be a contributor part of that. And so we thank you very much, and we thank you for everything that you do sincerely. And the Certificate of Valor reads, in recognition of your selfless act of bravery that saved a family's life on April 13th, 2020. You exemplify the bravery and the professionalism and the commitment to serving our community, all of you, that is inherent in the Lynchburg Fire Department. Every day we know what you wake up to do, and we thank you for that. Councilmember Wilder, would you please help with giving out to Battalion Chief Ricky Bomar? Right. Bomar. Yes, thank you. Firefighter Toby Bouye. Master Firefighter Wayne Casto. Okay. Firefighter Daryl DuBose. Firefighter Timothy Greenway. Battalion Chief David Jackson. Firefighter Tammy Kelly. Master Firefighter Patrick Madigan. Captain Matt Milner. Master Firefighter Holly Shackelford. And Firefighter Christopher Wilmoth. Again, thank you all for what you do for us every day, and we give you an applause every day. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you. And you're practicing social distancing. Thank you very much for not a group photo right now, but thank you very much. Tonight's City Council agenda is divided into two sections, consent agenda and general business. The first section is the consent agenda. This section includes routine items, and all items may be approved by one vote. I'll ask for a motion for the consideration. All right. Thank you. Any further discussion? All right. Voice vote. Councilmember Nelson? Aye. Councilmember Wilder? Aye. Councilmember Wright? Aye. Councilmember Pero? Aye. Councilmember Hegelson? Aye. Vice Mayor Dolan? Aye. And aye. Thank you very much. Next is number 10, the consideration of approving the minutes of the March 17th, 2020 minutes. Separate vote due to a council member needing to abstain. May I have a motion on that?
That was part of the consent agenda, right?
That wasn't the consent agenda.
It was. Is it in there still?
Item 10 is part of the consent agenda.
May I have a motion on the consent agenda? May I have a motion on the approval? Well, it was pulled out. Right. It was our clerk who pulled it out because of the absence of someone.
Still in the heading. I made a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, so we're approving all of that with that in there. Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. No, that's okay. Next is general business. This section, because there was someone who was absent on March 17th.
Personal decision.
Right, so that's why. Okay. But it is left up to council members if they want to pull because they abstain. Thank you. General business, this section includes general items of new business. Number 11, consideration of introducing a resolution to amend the fiscal year 2020 city, federal, state aid fund budget and appropriate $112,531 with resources from the 2020 Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program to purchase COVID-19 related equipment, decontamination services, supplies, overtime, and fringe benefits expenditures. And this will be Chief Zudema providing us with a summary. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, members of council. This grant opportunity came to us rather quick. We were very grateful for it. Requires no local match. The funds will be divided between the Sheriff's Office and the Police Department. It all goes directly towards COVID-related expenses, everything from personal protective equipment to other related equipment, overtime funding, sanitizing of vehicles and some holding cells, things like that, to make sure our officers and deputies are safe. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Go in front of, Finance Committee. It had been canceled ahead of time, and then this came up after that decision had been made.
All right. Does anyone have any questions? Councilmember Hegelson?
No questions, Madam Mayor, but as the chief has stated, the items on the Finance Committee were without a match like this, so we canceled the meeting, and so I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made. Any further discussion? And seconded? Councilmember Nelson? All right, any further discussion? All right, voice vote. Councilmember Nelson? Aye. Councilmember Wilder? Aye. Councilmember Wright? Aye. Councilmember Pero?
Aye.
Councilmember Hegelson? Aye. Vice Mayor Dolan? Aye. And aye. Thank you very much. It is approved. Next is consideration of introducing an uncodified ordinance amending city code to delay the assessment of the penalty that is normally assessed for the late payment of real estate taxes for the period of May 16th, 2020 through June 30th, 2020. And this will be Ms. Witt providing the summary. Thank you.
At the April 14, 2020 work session, City Council expressed interest in discussing the deferral of assessing penalty for the real estate tax installment due May 15, 2020 until June 30, 2020 due to the economic impact of COVID-19 on property owners. Due to the uncertainty regarding the impact of COVID-19 on the payment of taxes, staff does not recommend deferring the payment of penalty for this period of time. If approved by City Council, this action will impact cash flow for the end of the fiscal year leading into the beginning of fiscal year 2021. For reference, a $144,293 penalty was assessed for the May installment for fiscal year 2019.
Thank you, Ms. Witt. Yes, Councilmember Pero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move this ordinance.
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made and second. Any further discussion?
I understand that staff doesn't recommend this, and that's because I also understand staff's been very conservative in their views about how money should be managed this time. I've had a follow-up conversation with Mrs. Witt, who indicated so a $144,000 penalty was assessed. Of that, $60,000 was actually collected before June 30th. So less than half of that was collected before June 30th. The remaining of it, I'm sure, was collected afterwards. So what we're talking about is really letting $60,000 remain, and a penalty remain in the pocket of our taxpayers, just to get them through a hump that they have here. My follow-up question to that, I couldn't remember if I forgot to ask you this when we talked on the phone earlier. Is that $144,000? Is that a budgeted item or just excess revenue that ends up coming in that we do not budget for?
No, we do budget for penalty and interest.
Right. Yes. So, do we know where we are year to date on that budget line?
I do not.
Okay. But basically $60,000 was collected last year of that $144,000. So The ordinance does not affect interest. It does not affect the due date. It is still due and payable May 15th. If somebody can't pay or forgets to pay, then they're going to accrue interest from June 15th onward, May 15th onward. The penalty, however, is a 10% penalty. It's a significant penalty to keep people from kiting these payments, basically, and letting the city be a bank. So this motion and this ordinance is only to defer that penalty until June 30th. Hopefully, June 30th, things are back to normal. Hopefully, people will pay on time. If they pay after June 30th, that 10% penalty is assessed. So I'd hope council would consider supporting this, and for businesses, for citizens. We doing some research. It was, I believe, only 31% of the homeowners in Lynchburg pay through a mortgage broker, or the properties in Lynchburg pay through a mortgage broker. So this has the potential to affect 69% of the property owners in Lynchburg. So I think it's wide spanning. It's a goodwill gesture. It's something the city can do without jeopardizing an enormous amount of funds, and I hope that you all would approve this. Thank you.
Councilmember Hegelson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And as Councilmember Perro said, it's that 10% is pretty exorbitant. I mean, it's exorbitant, especially now when you have 10-year bonds at 0.6%. So interest rates are very low. We had recently, there was an overcharge on people with their water bill, and we're not paying them back 10% interest. So foregoing that 10% penalty, I think it's it's very high. If you're a day late and it's 10%, I mean, there's loan sharks that don't do that, but I recognize that the 10% that is in there now, if we can waive that, I think that would be, as Councilmember Perro said, a goodwill gesture, and I'll support that.
Further discussion? Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you,
And Councilmember Wright.
Ms. Witt, you indicated that, you stated that this amount that would be collected is within the budget that the manager has proposed. What amount is that? Is it 60,000 or is it the full 10%?
I can tell you in just a second. And it's my understanding is it's not a waiver of this penalty, it's a deferral till July 1st.
Yeah, it's the penalty.
Defer the penalty so you don't charge the 10%. Because they're a day late.
Unless you don't pay before July 1st.
Yes, exactly.
So my point is that Ms. Witt said that on June 1st, there are delinquent notices that are mailed out, so they get a lot of payments in June and penalties, and that penalty, the past year was about $60,000.
We budget $674,599 that was adopted for 2020.
So what amount, when we talk about the list and how we'll have to somehow come up to fill a gap that this might create, what is the amount of that gap?
We did receive $1.2 million in payments between May 16th and June 30th in 2020 because we send out a delinquent notice June 1st. So it does encourage people to make sure they're getting that payment in. So that's what's associated with that $60,000 penalty that was collected between May 16th and June 30th in 2019.
So this is impacting fiscal year 2020, the current fiscal year.
Right. So, okay, so we're going to have to make up that amount somehow, somewhere, if this is approved.
Yeah, because because we would be missing that revenue in 2020.
I've got to say, you read and hear a lot about what the federal government is doing to aid our small businesses in our localities. You hear about what the state is doing in the same regard. No doubt the city of Lynchburg has very limited resources to do anything. And these are the small nuances maybe not so small, but these are the nuances that we do have some flexibility and latitude over to help those persons and those enterprises and those businesses that we rely on for much of our revenue. And if there's anything that we can do to contribute to the solution of reviving the vitality and life of our businesses and not have our businesses end up on ventilators and terminal conditions, I think we should do it. And if $60,000 is something, along with the other contributions we've made over the last 2 months, I would be in favor of doing that.
Thank you.
May I add something else, Madam Mayor?
Okay.
I'm sorry. Were you finished, Mr. Nelson? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on your toes.
Coming to you.
I think we should have some contribution to the cause at this point.
I felt like I needed to allocate credit where credit is due. This was not my idea. This was, I was actually speaking to Mr. Norman Moon, and he was asking that we waive the whole thing, and I told him that we couldn't possibly do that, but we could. Then he said, could the penalty potentially be waived? And then he started listing off his properties that he doesn't own but he represents, and some of the significant corporations that were not paying their rent. And on these properties, I mean, it's they operate on a pretty small margin. So restaurants, obviously, and I don't want to name names, but he named one or two in the Walmart shopping center on Link Road that really surprised me. One that would have really surprised you, Madam Mayor, probably. So I think it was his idea, a way to help these small business owners get through this tough time. I just want to recognize it was that Mr. Moon brought it up.
All right, Councilmember Nelson, and I don't want to forget, Councilmember Wright also has a follow-up after Councilmember Nelson.
One other additional note on that, as has been commented upon, about 39% of our tax real estate revenue comes from persons who have a mortgage, and those tax payments are escrowed. So I think most of this reflects the payments from a commercial enterprise. And it's the commercial enterprises that we need to be viable and sustained, and this is going to affect them more than an individual taxpayer.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wright?
Thank you. And just to be clear, you're not talking about Judge Moon. You're talking about Son. That's right. I just want to make sure that we weren't that folks who might be watching from home knew who we were talking about. So it sounds like I just want to make sure I'm understanding that there are two issues here. One is cash flow based on anticipated, real estate funds coming in, and then so if you delay it and people actually take you up on that offer to hold off and not pay their real estate taxes until June 30th, that could be problematic for the city. So that's issue one, right? And then issue two is whether we forfeit the $60-some thousand or what have you in penalty. Are those sort of the twin issues that are at play here?
And it primarily is the cash flow issue, because associated with the $60,000 penalty is the $1.2 million in payment. Now, Councilman Nelson's right. I got an excellent staff, and we will eventually collect this, but it's going to impact the cash flow the most for 2020, as opposed to, we'll collect it in 21.
So I definitely hear what the other council members are saying about doing our bit to provide relief to both business and residential property owners in the city, and I'm certainly in favor of that. But can you sort of provide more about how problematic would that be for you if, what does the data suggest from, say, other cities that have done this? Have people taken the city up on the offer and then delayed their payment? Have escrow, like mortgage companies that should be paying out of escrow, have they held back on the money?
No, if banks, if they've got a commitment that if your money is in escrow, they will make those payments. So we will receive anything that is done in escrow through a bank.
Right.
That's pretty much guaranteed money. The concern is just the cash flow for the payments that we normally collect with a delinquent notice that goes out June 1st. So yes, where I believe we'll collect that money, it may take us 6 months or more, maybe to collect it later on. Maybe with the next installment, or the first installment that's due November 15th, it might be then that we start to catch up some of this and people will pay. That's my concern. It's just I'm not sure how many people will take advantage of this and pay later. So the impact to cash flow is my biggest concern.
So I guess I'm having a hard time understanding, how serious the consequence here, because here's the thing. I really want to vote in favor of this, but I don't know how difficult this is going to, what a bind this is going to put the city in. And I hear it's going to be a problem for cash flow, but I don't know how big a problem, or I'm having a hard time understanding that.
Well, if I don't collect based on the delinquent notice that generally goes out June 1st, which was last year was 1.2 million, the 60,000 in penalty isn't that big of a deal, because that's not that large of an impact. It's okay, so maybe now more people say, oh, if I'm not going to get a penalty, then I'll wait to pay. It depends on how many people do that and how long they wait to pay. So if we would collect that at July 1st, then there's not as big of an impact. But if they still don't have the money or they choose not to, they get the penalty, but I'm still not getting that payment, it could take longer to collect that.
So
I'm really not sure what the impact's going to be to how many people would elect to do that for our cash flow through the summer.
It sounds like that most people who are going to defer, or that would pay it a bit later, or because they don't want to pay the penalty. And if they didn't want to, so they didn't, and we didn't charge them the extra 60,000 of penalty, they will then pay before the penalty is assessed on the next one. So in the June 1st or we'd hope so. Yeah, or July. What's the date of it?
Excuse me?
July 1st is when it would be due?
Yes,
Okay.
July 1st is when it
So
would be due.
going from May 15th to July 1st.
Right. And it's just a risk to not know what that is.
we really just don't know what the consequence would be.
Right.
You said payment was due. The due date is not going to change at all, but the date the penalty is assessed is
That's
all.
correct.
But if I were, practically speaking, I would hold my money until I have to turn it over. Right.
But you get charged interest. Not waiving interest.
I did not.
That was going to be my
So yeah, can you all sort of break down for, apparently we are even confused, what is the sort of penalty? There's a 10% penalty if you don't pay on time, which we're talking about waiving. What's the interest?
Deferring.
About deferring, forgive me. What is the interest? Is there an interest assessed for late payment?
There is, but that was not part of what was questioned, that interest would still be due. And it's assessed on a monthly basis, so it wouldn't come into effect until July 1st.
Actually, that's a good question, Bo, and I think that should be waived as well, not just from the economics of it, but how are you going to calculate the interest, 2% interest on everybody's bill that they already got, and now we're going to have to rebill their fourth payment with an extra $1.72 on there.
Well, what is the interest rate?
The interest rate is 10% per annum.
So the interest rate, and knowing that you're charging an interest rate would help prevent some people just misusing it, I would think.
We add interest on a monthly basis, so we wouldn't add interest till July 1st anyway. So, and when you presented it, interest, you specifically said interest wasn't part of this. So
there's no interest being charged so the payments due normally May 15th. Because of the pandemic, we're going to say no penalty, pay your payment today if you can, hopefully, pay it by May 15th. But if not, if you don't pay it till July 1st, there won't be any penalty or interest if you pay it to that July 1st. If you pay it after that, then there'll be penalty and interest.
You're going to get 30 days, you're going to get 45 days worth of interest.
Yes, that's correct. The way the ordinance is written, interest will be
45
assessed.
days of interest according to this ordinance.
That's correct. Interest will still be assessed. That was not changed in this ordinance.
And that should be,
The proposal is only that penalty be deferred if you do not pay on time?
Correct, but operationally, interest isn't charged until July 1 anyway. That's operational. It'll be accruing.
It would be accrued back.
So people will ultimately have to pay that interest.
And penalty.
And penalty if they don't.
If they don't pay.
If they don't pay by midnight, June 30th.
The purpose of the penalty is it was explained to me, is it's some people that are interested in purchasing properties choose not to pay their real estate taxes whatsoever. And they just accrue over time. And it becomes part of the cost of their business. And they let the city fund the real estate. The reason that we have the penalty is to really prevent that and
Sure.
not, so the city is not their bank.
Sure.
And we have some developers that choose to do it anyway, or had in the past.
All right, everyone looks perplexed.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this proposal right now. Do we have to decide this tonight, or can we?
We can bring it back to you next week. One of the questions that I asked Ms. Witt was, what is the breakdown between residential and commercial? Because it sounds like we want to, well, what I think I'm hearing is we want to make sure that we are giving commercial particularly some leeway in their payment.
So the
Bring this back next week.
yeah, and I one thing I want to sort of float out there, I haven't obviously thought it through entirely, but the SBA required when businesses were applying for loans that they certify that they had COVID-related need for that relief. And I'm wondering if we could do something similar here and say, we will waive interest and defer the penalty as long as you pay by July 1, but you have to certify, you have to affirm, in a formal document, that you have a COVID-related need for that relief. And, that doesn't have to be really stringent, enough to put people off from doing it, but just to sort of hold them accountable, and it can be on the honor system. Is that something that people might find to be compelling?
So the city of Hampton.
What if they don't what? then they wouldn't get the relief.
And Vice Mayor Dolan had
Yeah,
something.
I just want to say, the city of Hampton is doing this, by the way, and what they're doing, they're, taxpayers that are suffering from financial loss, they have to apply to the city by a certain date, and then they get a deferral on their personal property tax and their real estate taxes. So, I mean, it can be done.
That's the personal property tax deferral.
Yeah, both,
Oh, and real estate.
yeah. Treasurer's office by May 15th.
The intent that I was trying to have was to minimize the operational effort to do this and just make it just an administrative, we're not going to impose a penalty until this. It wouldn't be hopefully any more work for staff. Everything's still due May 15th. People that can pay should pay and will pay, I hope. I'm going to pay May 15th. I don't want to pay interest at 10%.
Yeah, that's the interest. I just don't know why would you take advantage of this? You're still paying interest.
If you have to, it's 10%, you're basically taking a 10% loan from the city for a month. But it doesn't kick in, but it's not assessed until July 1 anyway.
But still.
It's just flexibility.
10% for
What would it be just to defer that interest as well? I mean, because if we're trying to, you hate to almost like a bait and switch. You're almost like saying, hey, we're gonna let you defer the penalty, so you take advantage of deferring the penalty because you couldn't, but then we're gonna charge you the interest.
Localities are doing it both ways, and all across the country.
I mean, because then you're gonna have to calculate. So if somebody sends in their payment, May 28th, you're gonna have to get out your calculator and do your time value of money for your loan amortization to figure out what the actual bill was. So if somebody had a bill of $175.22, then they send in the $175.22, and then you send them back a bill, say, well, you had 3 days worth of interest at $4.22, and you're sending them a bill which is costing more than the money going back, so.
We don't do that.
She just said the system calculates.
The system calculates it, and if they pay their payment late and they don't include interest or penalty, then that's billed in their next installment.
Yeah, so that's exactly. So this is the fourth one. So this is the last one, so you're going to have to send another bill, or otherwise then that's late.
Well, we do a delinquent notice June 1st.
But these were people that you wouldn't have a delinquent
Right.
notice
So
until,
that will
because they owed
change that.
$2.22. That's why I think we should just defer the interest as well as the penalty.
May I ask a question? So if I choose to pay June 28th, and I pay you the amount that was listed on my delinquency notice, am I going to get charged for a month and a half of interest
Yes.
in a follow-up? So I will be charged for that month and a half of interest?
Yes.
Okay. No, it goes on to but they'll be charged in the Q1 2021 payment will be when that charge is assessed.
Yes.
But it's late right then. So if somebody has a payment that's $200 and they pay $100, they're late on $100.
Yes.
And so they have a late payment penalty of 10% on the $100 that's late, plus the 10%. I mean, you're going to be doing lots of calculations and people are going to be upset because they thought that they deferred that. Because now there's going to be a 10% late penalty on the late portion that wasn't paid. Because they didn't know that there was interest that accrued, they just paid it a little bit late. So, I just think we need to remove the interest. I mean, that's,
The system
Ms. White.
calculates the interest based on what's unpaid. If they don't pay their penalty, they're assessed the penalty, and then we do a late notice where they know what they didn't pay and it accrues. Or if it's after the November payments have gone out, again, the system does those calculations for us. If you want to defer the interest as well,
whatever the date was, the June 30th.
Till July 1st?
July 1st, yeah.
then we can tweak the ordinance to make it say that.
Would it be possible to bring this back to us next week with the residential versus commercial information, along with an estimate of what that interest would cost us, were we to defer it?
Yeah, we would have to make some assumptions on
Sure.
how many would take
Yeah,
advantage of this.
absolutely.
Based
Well-
on something.
Well, and also, the bills are already on the street, and the due date's May 15th, so next Tuesday's May 5th. So, the later you make this, the less people that are going to know about it to even
Take advantage.
take advantage of it.
Councilmember Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do agree this probably needs to be brought back so we can all get ahead of around what it is we're talking about. But just so you know my mindset, I am in favor of no penalty because I do believe under these circumstances, the city should not do harm. And imposing a penalty on particularly commercial businesses at a time when they're down is harmful. I don't believe the city taxpayers as a whole should be financing anybody's enterprise. And that's what waiving the interest would be doing. We would be making a interest-free loan for that period of time. And I'm not in favor of that.
So, Madam Mayor, there's a motion on the table.
Yes.
It would be appropriate if there was a procedural motion that would be made to postpone the vote to next time that can be voted up or down. If that vote fails, then we'll vote the motion that's on the table. But right now, there is a motion on the table to adopt this ordinance.
I'm not going to make a procedural motion that we move it to next week.
Okay, so the motion is on the floor to adopt the ordinance as it's written. Councilmember Helgelson?
Just one thing, I guess, Councilmember Nelson, if the penalty is $60,000, and we're only looking at 1 month of deferral of interest, that would be basically 10 divided by 12, so we're looking at a small amount extra. We're looking at $60,000 of waiving the penalty and a very small amount, relatively speaking, of waiving the interest for that 1 month. $6,000 or whatever that would be. So I think what it would do would be a very small amount of money, and it would then make it very easy for someone to pay it without having to redo bills and recalculate when they paid it. So, if we could add that, could you support that, Councilmember Nelson?
It's more, thank you, it's more on principle than it is on sum of money to me.
I guess what the principle is the fact that we got to have to do all sorts of new bills. That's what I'm worried about.
No.
Does it anyway.
So if you pay your bill May 15th, you're done, they don't send you another bill. If you pay your bill May 20th, they're going to have to send you another bill.
No.
Because you didn't know what, you paid the amount that was on your previous bill without getting 5 days worth of interest.
It'd be added to the
the
next
next
time the
time
bill
the bill
regularly
comes.
goes out, which would be in September, so.
That's correct.
Right.
A few pennies or dollars from the last period cycle.
Without penalty or
Yes.
interest accruing on the interest and.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Because system's smarter than I am.
All right, so we have the motion on the floor to adopt the ordinance, and Councilmember Wright?
Yeah, I'm sorry, just one more item, and I'm going to vote in favor of this, but I think before I do, I just wanted to note, I spent a lot of time yesterday trying to figure out on the city website where like penalties and interest for real estate taxes and how it's assessed, and I had a really hard time finding that information. In fact, it was almost impossible to find that information. I went to the city assessor's website, I went to Commissioner of Revenue, Billings and Collections, and it just wasn't clear what the penalty structure is for real estate. At least that was my experience. Now, maybe I'm not a savvy user of technology, but I had a hard time finding it, and so I just put it forward that this might be something we might want to just make sure the public is aware of. I did not. I only found the real estate tax rate of $1.11 per hundred, but I did not find the penalty structure. You found it?
Oh, I've been using it for years.
Where? I would love to know where it
All
is.
right.
It's under assessor's office, and
Is it under the code? Do you have to go into the code
you
though?
put the property or the owner or the tax map number, and
Yeah,
then you go in,
right. So-
and it shows you assessment amount, and it shows you what the.
Sure, but I'm saying like you shouldn't have to go into your go to a specific property to be able to see the breakdown of like, okay, this is what the interest rate is. This is how the penalty structure works. Those things are like
Okay, I
spelled out up front. That's what I'm talking
Okay.
about.
All right, so thank you. So the motion is still on the floor to adopt the ordinance, uncodified ordinance amending city code to delay the assessment of the penalty that is normally assessed for the late payment of real estate taxes for the period of May 16th, 2020 through June 30th, 2020. With no further discussion, I will take the voice vote. Councilmember Nelson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilder?
Aye.
Councilmember Wright?
Aye.
Councilmember Pero?
Aye.
Councilmember Helgelson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dolan?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, and the motion passes. Consider adopting an ordinance establishing procedures for holding electronic meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic in order to ensure the continuity of city government. And I will turn to Mr. Irwin. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, at last week's meeting, council discussed adopting procedures that it would follow if council would choose to hold an electronic meeting. So Council Member Nelson made suggestions. We worked together to draft up tonight's proposal. It has two parts. Part one is if a majority of city council are physically assembled, council could by majority vote allow other council members to participate in that meeting electronically. Council would have to declare as part of that motion the special circumstances that justify doing that. The second part of the proposal is that if council would decide to hold a total electronic meeting and a majority of council would not assemble physically, it would require 5 votes of council to hold such a meeting, and council would also have to identify the special circumstances that justified holding a totally electronic meeting.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Nelson. Thank you.
It's clearly in the proposal, but I would just point out the justification for having a meeting where there's no physical quorum present, even if there is a supermajority that approves it, would only permit that meeting to address either issues that are directly related to the emergency or resolving the emergency, or issues that have a deadline that must be dealt with by council before the next regularly scheduled meeting, and those justifications have to be expressed and contained in the minutes to explain why it's essential.
Thank you. Councilmember Wright?
Madam Mayor, I move the approval of the ordinance as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Councilmember Nelson. Any further discussion? Councilmember Wright?
I think it was thoughtfully drafted and it raises the bar, I think, appropriately high for meetings not in chambers.
Thank you. Councilmember Nelson, any further discussion?
No,
As a
thank you.
second? All right, Councilmember Pero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One thing that I do like about this, it specifically ties it to the COVID-19 pandemic, which means after the COVID-19 pandemic is over, then this ordinance will effectively go away, and I guess we can remove it. Or it has to be read. I thought that was the earlier one. Is that one in this one too? But effectively, it's okay. So it effectively ties it to a time duration, so it can't go
The
away.
governor lifts the state of emergency, the ordinance goes away. The ordinance goes away anyway in 6 months, even if the state of emergency is still in effect unless council votes to extend it.
I'm a little in section A. I'm a little concerned about the term exceptional condition. So the exception, I may have an exceptional condition coming up, or one that I would classify in the terms of this language. We were supposed to, by our budget planning, we were supposed to get through this budget and be done with it before May 15th, right?
We were supposed to finish balancing today, as a matter of fact.
Okay. And due to COVID, I canceled my family vacation and reset my family vacation for the end of May. Does that constitute an exception? And if we're right in the end of our budgeting process, does that constitute an exceptional condition due to COVID? Certainly due to COVID. Or I was supposed to be on family vacation, but this was scheduled to be finished today. So
We're just kind of holding the budget today.
right. So am I going to be excluded from participating, or am I going to have to fly back from the family vacation or drive 16 hours round trip? So those are some of my questions, and how I could participate. So that's why I'm really taking. I might like to, if I could offer a friendly amendment, to strike the term exceptional, which is the fourth line in A. And you don't have to accept it. I'm not trying to put you in a bind. Oh, sorry, Mr. Wright.
I'm curious for Councilmember Nelson authored it, so I'm curious what he thinks, because he did it with intent.
My primary intent was to not make it convenient for us to accommodate the absence. So exceptional to me was compelling enough word that majority of council would have to find that that's something that's legitimate, and you wouldn't want to be onerous and impose on the council member because of the circumstances that council member is facing. And so if we agree it's exceptional, it is. I didn't get into defining exceptional, though.
I guess the one thing that what Councilmember Pero says, I think it should be, it shouldn't be incumbent upon the remaining members that are there at the quorum to decide if that person met some threshold, some arbitrary threshold. And so if there's a way to, you have a quorum that is needed to meet, so the quorum is present. So why does the quorum that is present get to decide if his justification is compelling enough?
My thoughts, if I might answer, would be that the council member would communicate in advance to the rest of council and explain why it is that it's not practical, effective, or for them to get back, and persuade at least 4 that it's exceptional enough that we should deviate from the usual traditional procedure of excluding any electronic vote. The first thing I thought of was a family emergency, a funeral, which we have seen in the past, and I would say that would be exceptional because you don't have control over it, or you anticipated one thing and suddenly circumstances beyond your control interfered with your prediction. I would say, given the way we've proceeded with the budget and the list and everything being delayed because of the economy these days, Councilman Pero's plea would be exceptional, and I would approve that.
Anything, under like a medical thing, I don't think we should have to disclose if we had a medical condition, and that's what we're really talking about, to say, hey, can you exclude me from the meeting because of my particular private medical condition, and now you exclude me. So it's maybe not traveling, but it's another thing that is now. So I just...
Yeah, I don't know that you need to explain what the medical diagnosis and prognosis is. You just explain a medical emergency or condition is preventing me from physically attending, whether it's a
assuming
broken...
everybody's going to say yes, but,
I mean, I'm fine striking the exceptional, but it would still remain that the council members would need to decide what they consider to be worthy of the they would still need to be satisfied. So I think it's more a case of semantics than anything.
It is.
it's semantics, but we could say now that if you have a reason, kind of like what we do for the budget, the list, if you want to put something on the list, it goes on the list without a vote on it. So if you can't make it to the meeting and there's 4, come into the meeting. I mean, since it's a one-time thing, so.
I don't want to, let me see. I'll probably delay my vacation anyway till the 19th because that's a regular council meeting. I despise missing council meetings. But why don't we just get this budget approved by the 12th, and then we don't have to worry about it.
Hopeful.
June is when it has to be approved, right?
It has to be approved
Calendar.
by June 30th. That is correct, by state code. So you made significant progress today on the list. So I think that's great. Next week, as I mentioned, we're going to talk with you about trash and get direction from you on where you want to go with that. I think that could take easily an hour. So then you would have another hour to work on the remaining items on the list. Then on the 12th, you have a regular meeting, and I think we have some public hearings that are scheduled for the 12th. So that you'll have your regular meeting at 7:30, you'll have your budget meeting at 4. If you could get through the entire list then this is a moot point.
Exactly.
The 19th, council elections, no meeting.
Oh.
You have a regular,
No meeting?
you have
So
a
no
regular
meeting
meeting.
on the 19th?
No, correct. No meeting on the
But
19th.
last time we talked about that was for budget sessions only. So there's no regular
because it's a
meeting.
council election,
There's no regular meeting either. Great.
yes, correct. When are you planning to be gone?
Deleted all my regular meetings because of
Right.
that list.
When are you going to be gone?
Technically the 15th through the 29th.
Okay. So you have a regular council meeting on the 26th to continue budget balancing
Oh,
if
that's a regular
necessary.
meeting. Oops.
But it sounds like you might be able to get finished with that on the 12th. And if you can make that your goal, then Councilmember Perro's issue
Oops.
becomes a moot point.
Sorry, I was thinking that the fourth meeting, or the second meeting of the month was the 19th. It's actually the 26th, so I'll have to come back to that. Okay.
So, I guess just to bring us back to
Yes.
the ordinance.
I asked if you wouldn't mind, as a friendly amendment, striking the word exceptional. It does not preclude.
I am comfortable striking the word exceptional, otherwise keeping it as is.
All right. Councilmember
As a
Nelson.
practical matter, if we said there must be a compellingly exceptional, outstanding, and 4 of us agreed to that, then it is.
That's right.
So I don't know that it makes any difference whether exceptional's in there or not. 4 have to agree to it, so that's fine.
All right, so the motion is on the floor to accept with the exclusion of the word exceptional. And any further discussion? I think we've discussed it. Councilmember Nelson, I'll call for a voice vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilder?
Aye.
Councilmember Wright?
Aye.
Councilmember Perro?
Aye.
Councilmember Helgelson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dolan?
Aye.
And I also. Thank you very much. The motion passes. Next is consideration of...
Mayor, before you get to
sorry.
that, I just want to say, a lot of localities are holding electronic meetings. Council is probably wise to have stayed away from those so far. The city of Petersburg held an electronic meeting yesterday where they let citizens, council members, and staff participate in the meeting by phone and electronically with video camera. During the beginning of the meeting, somebody hacked into the audio portion and started making lewd comments, so they had to try to block that. Later on in the meeting, when they were doing one of the video camera presentations, a citizen appeared nude. So when the mayor tried to disengage the video, they ended up shutting down the whole meeting and then had to get the IT department back in to set it back up. And the meeting took 9 hours with all the technical glitches. So it's probably best for council to continue its current practice, considering what can go wrong with electronic meetings.
That's an issue question.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Irwin, for that information. Thank you. Consideration of a closed meeting for the discussion and consideration of prospective candidates for the position of city manager pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia. May I have a motion to go into a closed meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. The motion has been moved by Councilmember Wilder and seconded by Vice Mayor Dolan. We are now in closed meeting. Thank you.
Aye.
Aye. Everyone's an aye. Yeah, we are staying here in council chambers, so thank you very much.